start, more people will start coming in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Raja Bukhari. I am a program manager for the Center of Excellence in Responsible Business at the Pakistan Business Council. Some of you have already worked with us. I see some familiar names. Really love the re-engagement. Thank you so much. So today's session is going to be with K Electric. They were the runner-up last year for our Employer of Choice Gender Diversity Awards, and their performance was excellent based on the fact that they disclosed on a lot of the questions that were in the Gender Diversity and Disclosure Scorecard. And this is a scorecard that we will be going over today as well. It's a scorecard that was emailed to you about 4 months ago, and then there have been repeated follow-ups to assist you and guide you on how you can disclose on gender practices and policies within your organizations. So how we're going to do what's going to happen today is the chat is open. Everyone, please, I encourage you to introduce yourselves, your organization, your designations, and any questions that you have, please type them down. Once your speakers are through with their segments, then we'll look at the questions. We'll do a quick Q&A as well. There's a Q&A chat box that you can use. And with that, I think I will hand it over to the CEO of the Pakistan Business Council, Mr. Ahsan Malik.
Thank you, Raja. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. A very warm welcome from me also. It's a great pleasure to have Sadia join us today to share her personal experience as well as KE's progress on creating an open and transparent environment to promote gender equity, which is what we are trying to strive towards. As you know, KE ranked second, as Raja just mentioned, in the PBC ISC Gender Diversity Award last year. No doubt we will benefit from her knowledge and experience, but also learn about what they have achieved since winning the award and what do they hope to aspire to do for the future. I have, had the privilege of working with Sadia earlier at Unilever, and I know how committed she is personally to delivering, diversity and inclusion. And KE is a challenging environment. There are certain sectoral challenges, not like an FMCG company. So I think it will be very interesting to know how she plans to go ahead and take this gender equity forward. Very quickly, why do we promote policy disclosure? Why do we and IFC promote policy disclosure? As much as, of course, we are interested in implementation also of these policies. It is simply because when organizations start revealing their policies, sharing their policies, they not only create a clarity within the organization and promote retention, but they also attract new talent from outside. So public disclosure or policy sets a framework of accountability, which in turn then nurtures the actions, the processes, and creates the facilities, and more importantly, the behaviors within the organization to take the objective of diversity forward. The PBC IFC Awards, of course, promote sharing of best practices for the benefit of a wider set of interested businesses to emulate. So, for example, if you have great policies which you are implementing really well, however, you don't disclose those, others cannot see what you're doing. You may be doing a great task, but they don't have the ability to emulate. And only by emulation do we promote gender equity in the wider sort of country and indeed the world. Our objective is therefore also to move from having just a symbolic one single woman on the board, which, as you know, today is required for listed companies, to having a much more balanced representation cutting across all the operational levels. So not just the board, but the first level below the board, which is usually the management committee or executive committee or whatever, and then the second level and the third level, and indeed all the levels, going down to the factory floor. It's also really to encourage responsible businesses to also go beyond their own immediate environment, which is their factories or their offices, but also look at their supply chain partners, some of whom may be SMEs, to also adopt the same kind of responsible practices. So that's how you build the ecosystem, and everybody can benefit. As Raja mentioned, last year we had 43 companies that submitted. This year we have 55 companies that have registered already, and some have sent in their submissions. We are hoping that more will join. The deadline to submit is 30th April, so there's a little bit of time left. And the ceremony will be held in late June. The purpose of today's webinar is like one yesterday with Essence Eye of Daraz, which that Daraz was the winner last year. is really to hear about the disclosure process at KE. I want to also mention that we have on the SERB website, an analysis of last year's submission, and of course this should also be helpful for this year's entrants. So before we listen to Sadia, over to you, Charles. TBC and SERB have benefited enormously from your and IFC's collaboration. So over to you, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sansa. Appreciate that. And I will just put a quick presentation on. It's been a really great collaboration with PBC, and it was a real learning process for everyone. Just like to say this was a, I guess, tailor-made scorecard. I mean, it's not that this is a scorecard that was taken from some other country and brought to Pakistan. This was the product of a lot of different exercises that were taken, including a survey of several, about almost 100 firms in Pakistan. Also, focus group discussions that were held at the beginning, and so there was a wide range of inputs to test out, the scorecard, and so we're really pleased, with that product. And in fact, around IFC globally, this is seen as a real achievement and something that was really unique to Pakistan. So we're all very proud of the result and the competition last year. So preparing for 2023, just wanted to quickly, review a few things and give a brief discussion or outline of the scorecard and the purpose for this whole exercise, actually. So I think many of you on this call are very aware of the data that basically shows the low levels of female labor force participation at around 22%, and the ranking of Pakistan on the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index at 145. Which is a slight improvement over the previous year, which was 153. When the report comes out 2023, it will actually have benefited from the whole process that was done last year, and I hope we'll see an additional increase in the ranking. But it's a very important thing to see a positive trend coming. So we know what the situation is, and a lot of this is meant to address that, but not, in itself, being ranked high in gender index is not the objective. It's an indicator, but it's not the objective. The objective is to really improve business, and that's why we've, a very important part of this whole process is to make it very clear that there's a business case for gender equality. It's not something that's done as part of corporate social responsibility. It's not something that's done because it's nice to do, but it's something to do because it makes business sense. And in this slide here, I mean, we've done a lot of research at IFC and a number of other organizations like ILO and even McKinsey have done various studies on this topic, and it very clearly shows that firms that have more gender diversity have a better share price than those that don't. They have better returns and better performance and better growth rates. And one study actually hinted that Pakistan itself is really, its GDP is underperforming because of that previous slide's 22% statistic around women employment, and that the GDP could be much higher, as much as 30% higher, if there was a full gender equality. But just two numbers that stand out in various surveys. One was ILO survey of I think around 2,000 firms globally, that said about 2/3 of the companies surveyed reported that gender diversity initiatives improve their profits. So 2/3 of companies globally, and that profit improvement was anywhere from 10 to 15%. So that's a pretty important number. And McKinsey's survey, they surveyed firms and put them in quartiles of their gender performance. And the first quartile firms ranking in gender diversity in regards to how diverse their executive teams are, were 20% more likely to be above average in profitability than the lowest quartile of firms. In other words, those with more gender diversity in their executive teams were 20% more likely to experience above average profitability than those that were in the lower quartile. So I think these kind of numbers really show that there's a diverse case, a business case for diversity, and IFC's own internal surveys of our invested firms show the same thing. And so this is something that we try to promote, not just through policy, but also through the firms that we actually invest in, because we see as an investor, shareholder, or lender that this will help those firms to be much more profitable and more sustainable in the long run. So I mentioned that we had done several pieces of research before coming up with this scorecard and the awards event last year. And through the various surveys and focus group discussions, we came up with 4 broad recommendations to firms, and this was based on the fact that these were areas that could be improved. For example, that if firms could do more to proactively collect data on gender diversity, right, and that would benefit them in terms of tailoring solutions, formulating policies, basically understanding where they are, in their own gender diversity, objective. The second one was that it makes sense and that firms should do more to engage in regular reporting and disclosure of practices. And this was a pretty big weak point after we did the survey, and even in the awards last year, firms did not score as well on the disclosure part as they did on the actual having policies and having practices. But disclosing those publicly was something that wasn't done that widely. And this is where, disclosures benefit you because it makes you more attractive, A, to investors, B, to potential staff, and C, to customers who like to see these things. So we highly recommend greater disclosure. What was discussed yesterday with Daraz and this point 3, that supporting women in their career progression and providing mentoring was something that they saw as very important, and that firms and that we see as very important, because this is a difficulty we found in the surveys, that even if you have a high entry level of women employees, as they move up the career ladder in the firm, that those numbers decrease, and sometimes the access to higher level management positions decreases. There are many reasons for that, and I think we'll hear, I hope, from Sadia and from K Electric how they've tried to tackle those things, because that's there are many factors involved. And that the final recommendations is that firms need to be introspective, need to really look at what they're doing and actively solve the challenges that arise. And each firm may have its own set of challenges. They're not that are not generic to industries or countries. And so it's important to identify how these issues face them individually, how to be more flexible, how to provide more opportunities, but to really have an internal process to review and to improve. So then, based on all this work, we came up with, as the scorecard basically has 5 gender equity principles. And these, those of you who are working on the scorecard right now, I hope these are clear enough to you, but basically these 5 areas are around leadership, how effectively do firms incorporate women leaders into their, not just boards, but into their senior management positions. The diversity itself of the workforce. This is something, not just total numbers, but also in various positions within the firms. Something that globally is measured. I think we also found during this process that firms here in Pakistan aren't measuring their pay gap as frequently between similar jobs in companies, and the pay differential between women and men doing similar jobs. Globally, you see this happening, and in fact, I was watching CNBC a couple of nights ago, and there was a discussion around this, in New York Stock Exchange. It's a big topic, and there was a discussion around, even in the US, there is a pay gap between women and men in same positions, but there's enough data to be able to have an informed discussion about these things. And this is something that's necessary, I think, in Pakistan. Areas where we see a lot of strength and a lot of, advancement are around optimal workplace. And perhaps even COVID contributed to this, because there was much more, awareness amongst firms of the different needs that mothers or women may have in the workforce around leave, around flexible work arrangements, around health and respectful workplace. And we had a really good discussion yesterday with Raz on this point, and I hope we can do that again today. And this is something IFC's worked on, and we work closely with BBC as well on gender-friendly workplaces. So I think it's an area where, I hate to say that's one of the easier things to target, because we can see it, we can feel it, and it's something that there's a lot of discussion that may be harder to target some of these other areas like leadership and gender pay gap, but we need to focus on all of them. And then finally, how to prepare women for leadership roles in a company. And that's around training, mentorship, coaching. These 5 areas make up the scorecard. And last, just to make a pitch for joining the competition, and it was really exciting last year to see the excitement that not just the top 3 firms, but many of the participants who were there and were very interested in being recognized for all their policies, and hopefully in year 2 have learned, and to adapt and to even improve on their previous submissions. But why join? Why be part of this? It's because first, the business case, the positive effect that this would have on your company. Second is to demonstrate how a firm can be a leader. I think those who stood out in last year's competition have shown that they're leaders and are recognized as leaders now more than ever. They may have already been, but now more than ever on these topics and gender equity. Again, understanding this, being part of this helps to be introspective and understand the business case and the importance, both internally and externally, of having these policies and disclosing these policies. But it shows that firms are serious about women's rights and making that a center of business and a key objective, in addition to being a profitable firm and a socially responsible firm, but that this is one of the areas that's a key objective of firms. It links, I think, this being doing the scorecard exercise in itself, I think, makes firms look internally and continue to have constructive conversations internally about policies, and using the scorecard as a tool can help make that happen. And last but not least is the overall just resilience and profitability argument, and that using data is really important here, because I think when we started this exercise, we had focus group discussions. We had a lot of discussion around, yes, we have a policy, yes, we do something, but we didn't have the numbers to back it up. And the firms may not have been setting specific targets against which the numbers that are achieved, would try to match. So having a target is important, because having a number is a good thing, but having a target is something to strive for and to extend and even stretch over time. So that's a brief summary, but yeah, we're really excited to have K Electric here to talk about their experience, and hand it over back to Raja. So thanks very much for your patience and listening.
Thank you so much, Charles. That review was really important because it brought up some of the things that we emphasize strongly in SERP, that when we talk about sustainability or ESG, and one of them is social impact, and the subcategory of that is gender diversity, we're not talking about just outcomes and impact. We're talking about taking a risk management approach, realizing that there are factors outside of the finances that you look at that impact your business in the long run. We learned that yesterday with Daraz. Today, very excited to have Sadia on board so we can further explore this. And as I emphasized yesterday, what's really impressive and very lucky for us at the BBC is that the companies that performed the best in the scorecard last year are Pakistan's own companies. They were started here, their operations are here, which really emphasizes on the point that if you want to accomplish true gender diversity and inclusion and then maintain that in your organization, you can do that with regional best practices. You have champions that you can learn from right here. There's adaptability in the things that we learn from global practices that can be brought to Pakistan. And with that, Sadia, I'm going to start off with my favorite question, because as you know, the gender wage gap, it is a significant problem in Pakistan, globally as well, more and so in Pakistan, unfortunately. And what really hinders our issue in dealing with this is that people don't disclose it. Companies don't measure it. A lot of the responses I received last year said, we don't have discrimination in our remuneration policies, which is fantastic, but that's not equivalent to the wage gap, right? Could you talk about that for a little bit?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, sir, for giving us this opportunity and also allowing us to share our success stories. Learn from the best, as Sam is right here. He's been one of my closest mentors, continues to be a very, very, my guiding light, I would say. So very, very happy to be here, honored, honestly. Talking about the gender wage gap, this is something very close to me as well, to my heart. I love how, the whole D&I conversation has moved away from equality to equity. Equity is really the heart or the root of the problem. If anyone were to ask me, if you're looking at women empowerment, if there's one facet that you could choose, I would, without blinking for a second, say it is financial equity. That is the only way that you can level the playing field. It was a bit of a shock for us to know that I think K Electric was the only company in the entries last year which actually disclosed the gender pay gap. And I take that with a lot of pride, because it was a bold move on our part. There's a lot of lip service around gender diversity that I have seen and experienced in my life. And I think putting it out there in black and white, it wasn't a rosy picture, but when we put it out there in black and white, it made everybody in this company accountable to do two things. One, to make sure it doesn't go down, and to make sure that we get it right. And it sort of accelerated our commitment to eliminate the gender pay gap. We are miles ahead from where we were last year. In terms of the transparency part, I think that's also the heart of our ESG ambition. So, if you disclose it, or if you're going to talk about where you are, it is really going to sort of accelerate your journey. I think somebody said that a goal set properly is halfway reached. So when we put it out there in black and white and made a commitment that we need to fix it, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, it sort of gave everybody a very clear vision. And I believe that it's not that difficult. If you look at the entire sustainability space, nobody's going to penalize you for having a goal which is perhaps not too ambitious, but not having one should never be the answer. I do want to acknowledge, when we did our entry last year, and this is, I think it applies to every facet of life. It is okay to ask for help. I remember I was at the SERP office. I sat down with all of you, and we went through the entry together. And there were a lot of things that we had just sort of taken for granted or not disclosed. So disclosure is extremely important, and I am in the field of communications. So if you're doing good work, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't talk about it, why you shouldn't publicize it, why you shouldn't put it out in your sustainability report, why you shouldn't have a page on your website, talking about it, how deeply and how importantly you take this cause and what it means to you. So I think disclosing the gender page, the wage gap, has actually been a very good thing for K Electric. And it's also sort of helped us trigger on what else can we do. One of the most critical things that's helped us get ahead in this journey is to stop looking at salary history when it comes to recruiting women. Because if you're going to keep them at, they're already paid low, and if you're going to start benchmarking them against their last paid drawn, you will never ever sort of address that gap. So that's really, it really helps. I think disclosure is perhaps the most important part, which is why I love this scorecard.
Thanks so much, Sadia. You hit a lot of really important points here. When I first moved to Pakistan, I was so surprised to hear that I have to write my previous salary. And I'm like, what if I was underpaid? What if the organization was too small? There's so many different facets here. And then, if you already start with a low salary and then that continues, it propagates throughout your career, then the wage gap doesn't close. So it's sort of like companies are working against their own best interest by asking for the previous salary. Could you give us a few strategies? I think we had this conversation once that K Electric has made the concerted effort to reduce their pay gap. First of all, could you clarify to everybody that revealing your pay gap does not reflect negatively on the organization? Like Charles said earlier, I mean, you have to know where you are to get to the targets where you want to be, right?
So again, even for example, forget about gender. If you look at any carbon emission, any goal, it is okay to have a goal, whether you do it by 2030, by 2040, 2050. It's important to know the baseline. So we set the baseline last year and we have improved. So again, putting it out there in black and white really helps. And it doesn't, I mean, you have to sort of be okay with it. A lot of people will not disclose it because they think it will make them look bad. There are three ways to sort of look at the gender pay gap. Again, you look at the qualification of your staff, the level at which they are working, and also what kind of work they're looking at. And when you start looking at this, a lot of other things unlock for you, Raja. You start looking at the sustainability part. I think Charles touched upon this, that while creating opportunities is your first bold step, retention and keeping those women in the organization is a big challenge. So when you start looking at the multiple layers, you look at the ratio of increments. So when you start applying the gender lens to if are women getting the same level of increment, if you look at the ratings, are they being left behind? Because there's also multiple layers in your career progression where we have to continue doing our interventions. If I may sort of segue a little bit into how it's not just about financial equity only when it comes to retention. You have to look at the life cycle of a female employee, and it's slightly different than our male counterparts, because we have some personal, nature-driven milestones that we need to attend to. I mean, it's not a choice; it's something which is part of our life. And when organizations incorporate those milestones into their D&I journey per se, there is a greater chance at success. I want to give a few examples. So the first stage is, of course, making sure that the opportunity exists and then sort of bringing in women into those roles. The second stage, I would say, is once you've given them the opportunity, For women, particularly in our culture and society, there are two key barriers to entry. One is mobility, and the other one is safety. So you have to make sure that you address these two challenges for them to be able to continue to arrive at work. The transportation or mass transit system in Pakistan is not that great, and neither is our security, transporting to and from work. And then there are two layers of security. There's one when you get to the workplace, there's one at home where your home environment needs to be safe and secure. And then there's a work environment where you need to be sure that when you walk in here, you will be safe. And if somebody is engaging in a misconduct, there will be a repercussion. So one, mobility, second is safety. These are two key barriers. These are, I think, absolutely must-haves as far as bringing women into the workplace is concerned. And the third, like I said, you have your personal milestones, which is you get married, you have additional responsibilities as compared to your male counterparts, and maternity. Building your workplace policies around these personal milestones is extremely important. I want to give 3 examples how K-Electric is, and a lot of companies are doing it as well. So your agile working and flexible timings is extremely important, which allows women to work around the schedule of their children's, schools, parent-teacher meetings, the pick and drop, and so on and so forth. The second is when they're going on maternity leave, making sure that not only do they have access to good maternity leaves, it is now mandated by law, but I noticed, in last year's entries, some of the companies had just not even mentioned that as something that they're doing. So please, if I'm sure you're doing it, just talk about it. But not just staying there. So we've got this very interesting program. It's a vitality program, and it's targeted at 2 people: the expecting parent, but also the line manager, so that the line manager can help understand the journey and deal with them. So having sort of reminders for checkups. There are multiple visits to the doctor that you need to do while you're expecting. So making sure that the line manager is also in sync with the entire journey, and then making sure that when the mothers return to work, it is a very challenging process. There's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of anxiety, there's separation anxiety, and general worries because you've got a little baby. Making sure that you sort of work and keep a wellness and vitality check, and ensuring that, just because the person or the employee has not been physically in the role does not reflect in their ratings. So that period is discounted for not as absence, but as a general time away from work, and should not reflect on their annual performance negatively in any way. These are policies that make sure that when women go on leave, they're not worried about their return to work. It's a very key step. We have an e-module, which makes it very easy for both line managers and working mothers to cope up with their journey. And you can enroll, and it's a voluntary sign up. It's helped a lot of women return to the workplace and go easy on their mat leaves. And there are little things that you can do. There's a lot that you can do, but then there's some things that really make a difference. So I thought this was really, really critical to enable working mothers deal with their personal milestones. I think the last part, and Charles talked about it, is retention when it comes to succession marking, making sure that pivoted for growth. So K-Electric has put together a very specific program for female leaders, and we've got 25 women identified as future leaders and being developed and trained for future leadership roles. They have access to mentoring and coaching opportunities. They're also part of important conversations. If I may, the sector that we are in, we've got tremendous impact. So we also want to make sure that, when we're looking at energy sector policies, particularly work on the renewable side, we have female voices in the room being part of that policy shaping. So it's a much larger impact here as well.
Sadia, that what really is standing out here is that it's not just about equality, it's about equity. If you're hiring women, you have to look at the ecosystem within which they run their lives, and accordingly, a company can then really extract the best out of their talent, their capacity to not just do their jobs, but to be future leaders. And it is a very important thing to remind our audience that K Electric is not only in a very traditionally male-dominated industry, but being a utilities company is a whole set of challenges on its own. My next question, actually, you answered it. That was great, which was about the different strategies that you've implemented so far to not just, have gender diversity, but to sort of retain the women that you have. And I think Ahsan Malik also said it earlier, that we don't just have women coming in to take leadership positions, but they're being cultivated throughout your succession pipeline. So women who started off at KE at lower tiers are the ones that are now moving through management, specifically through programs in leadership. And we did review the Vitality program, I think a few weeks ago with your Center of Excellence. And what really stands out here is that sabko pata hai ki women, a lot of them become mothers. It's just, just the way our culture works. But the conversations around what it really means to be a mother, the everyday challenges, how difficult and how sometimes it's impossible to imagine what pregnancy is like, to have that communication between managers, employees, so that everyone's aware of the different challenges. It's something that really stands out. It's a very I think it's an excellent initiative, and I think it's one of those initiatives that's very I think it's either very rare, it doesn't really happen in other organizations. I think we also touched upon that when we had a conversation previously about it. I hope other companies can learn from it and just see how easy it is to adapt, because this is already being done by a Pakistani company. I wanted to be mindful of the time, so we leave some room for Q&As. I do want to encourage the attendees to start putting in their questions. My last question would be something we've already covered, but just so that we can emphasize it on a little more. What is the business imperative to disclose? How has KE significantly seen improvements in their operations and outcomes when the disclosure process was initiated and really has been inculcated into the company mindset? If you could just comment on that for a bit.
Sure. In terms of the business imperative, to be honest, I think it's quite obvious. Women particularly have spent a lot of years demonstrating that this is right for business. Charles spoke about it as well. As far as the overall global space is concerned, companies tend to do better. The example that we just spoke about, the maternity and wellness program, the Vitality program, it came from a mother who was actually our D&I lead, and when she had a baby, she was going through postpartum, and she conceived this program. So it's about having, if the women are there, I love it that they will add value and they will give you these ideas. So the business case is right there. The number of women that this program has helped is phenomenal. The feedback that we get. But talking more specifically on the business imperative, K Electric was a bit late to the diversity journey, and this is not unique to K Electric. I mean, if you look at energy sector or the power sector globally, it is the worst sector for women in leadership roles. WEF just put out their gender gap report, and we're literally at the bottom. And this is despite every year, the International Energy Agency puts out a report saying, women are doing much better in the energy sector. But if you look at the other sectors, we're literally at the bottom. So it's not very different in Pakistan. We've got our own social concerns, but it is a sectoral thing. There is a general perception that women don't apply for STEM roles, and that's 80 to 90% of our company is technical. So there was a bit of a struggle when it came to recruitment, and we've changed our strategies a little bit. There are three things that we've employed, if I were to sort of sum it up, is of course making sure that we tackle the mobility and safety, because a lot of our work is also in the field. And we've done some really interesting things on the safety side. I will talk about it when I get a chance. But when we started bringing women in, I'm going to say this, and then we started with meter readers. Now, if you have meter readers across Pakistan, we have about, I think, 600 to 700 of them, all men. And, nobody's ever questioned it. And then one day we said, well, women can do it too. I mean, it's meter reading, right? There's a lot of back and forth. And then we brought the women in. There was 33% improvement in the accuracy and the quality of meter reading right there in the first year. We started with 3. Today we have, I think, more than 37 female meter readers and growing strength to strength. And that's my second point. There is strength in numbers. As a company which has more than 10,000 employees, we have the luxury of doing things in larger numbers. But whenever you're doing it, don't hire the lone ranger. Only is lonely. So when you hire them in pairs, in groups of 3 or 4, the likelihood of retention increases manyfold. When we spoke to the women who were literally the first trailblazers, they said that, if I was the only one, I would not have survived. I had company, I had solace, I knew I wasn't the only one, and I could share what I had with somebody, and I got strength. We got strength from each other. So putting that into perspective, and then once we did that, we didn't stop there, and we started looking at all the roles which were predominantly considered male. I mean, there was no restriction that only men can do it. It's just that, we never thought that women could do it. And the nature of our businesses, we're spread out across the city. We've got small offices. So maybe at a grid site, there are 5 to 7 people. So it's always been, you can't have a daycare for 5 people if there's one female and so on and so forth. You cannot have a daycare facility at a grid station per se. And we started working on those questions. And we've given women who are now working on our grid stations. We've, mashallah, got 10 of them. And they're the only ones in the country, only women working on grid stations, handling transmission networks. So we've given them an allowance, which sort of compensates them. Either they can hire a nanny and reimburse the monthly expenses, or they can have access to a daycare facility and reimburse the fee for that. So if I can't give them something on site, doesn't mean I choose not to. We need to find workarounds for all of these things. And the partnership that you will have, in a male-dominated sector, you have to bring your male colleagues on board. You have to have male allies and male sponsors for your diversity journey. I thought this was the most important critical milestone that we were able to unlock very early in our D&I journey, is to have our male colleagues on board and say, yes, we would like to do this. We agree this is good for the business and we will support you. So that's, again, a very important point for everybody on this journey. Bring your male champions on board ASAP.
That covers a lot of the most significant and high impact strategies that companies can use. Gender sensitization of male employees, safety, looking at mobility, having conversations around maternity and what it's like to raise children, and flexibility, which is something that is a big part of SERV's mandate, but it's really heartening to see more and more companies adopt that, and not just adopt it, but talk about it very openly. There are a few questions coming in, Sadia, for you. So one of them is, if you could just briefly describe the types of trainings that you can provide to future female leaders or to prepare them for leadership roles.
Okay. So if I were to sort of sum it up, there is a leadership exploration development program. It's a lead program that we've constructed, alongside a partner. And I go back to the fact that, you don't have to do your D&I journey alone. You will find able partners. There are plenty, including SERV. And having an able partner to sort of help you craft that journey. So we've put together a leadership program where, we address inherent biases, whether it's related to negotiating, having a seat at the table, raising your voice, and looking at business verticals. So, historically, women have started sort of grooming themselves or sort of seeking education in roles where they see more women in leadership. So creating a structure of visible female leadership across departments is also something that we're working on. bringing them into those cross-functional teams. I spoke about this earlier. We have a lot of projects that we work on, and we make sure that there is representation of senior female leaders and the second-tier layer, so that there is role modeling happening iteratively in the organization. There's a structured program. It identifies women, puts them through that program, gives them training and mentoring, access to opportunities, and then making sure that it translates into regular business work. If you're not going to embed it into your business process and keep this in isolation, the likelihood of success is going to go down. So we make sure that we've got both sides covered. I hope that answers this question.
I think it does. A couple of other questions relate to maternity leaves and how to accommodate working mothers. I think those were answered really fantastic by you already. I wanted to actually, there's a question that came in about supporting single mothers. If you want to just comment on that real quick.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Roshni Baji program. This is a door-to-door neighborhood safety initiative. We started with 50 women. We're now at 150 women. These women are not only, sort of helping us communicate safety awareness drives, but they're also Pakistan's first female certified electricians in terms of, the partnerships and the certification that they have received. So they're qualified and trained electricians. When we started this program, we actually saw that this program was attracting. It's field work. It's difficult. And while there's a lot of resistance from the backgrounds that they come from, we did notice that there was a rising trend of a lot of single women and single mothers joining this program. So we put together this program, and we sort of created an ecosystem. Because it's a field role, and it's at the bottom of at the K pyramid, making sure that they had access to transportation, so mobility allowances, pick and drop. And the request actually came from these women is that most of them wanted to learn how to ride a bike. So we rolled out a bike riding training. A lot of them, by the way, now commute on their bikes. When you see a female riding on a motorbike in Karachi, there's a high likelihood that she may be working for K Electric. So when you support single mothers, it does go a long way. So some of them, and again, this goes to the fact that, because they're so bogged down by their day-to-day responsibilities, they weren't aware of a lot of technology and tools available to them. So making sure that they have the daycare allowance available. And, in the case of one Roshni Baji, and, we were having this conversation with her, and she was kind of worried. She had zero support systems. And this is about having a conversation also, right? And she mentioned that, post 3 o'clock and between 3 and 5, her children are unsupervised, and they're both under 12. They're at home, and that is a huge worrying factor. So she's always rushing, and she's got flexible timings, but she's not always able to make it home. And that is a huge worrying factor for her. And she's always afraid because everybody knows that they're alone at home. And we introduced her to your surveillance cameras and put the app on her phone. So she's able to keep an eye on her children while she's at work. She knows, are they sleeping? Are they having food? Are they up to any monkey business? So little interventions like these is how we're doing it. We don't have it nailed down yet, but what we have learned is that there are a lot of customizations, tailoring, and flexible solutions that we need to offer based on an individual's needs. Some will have support networks and a mobility allowance and a daycare allowance will work for them, but others may need different things. So a lot of conversations need to happen. I think there's the lean in circles per se, very effective tools to sort of pull out what more you can do to support the women. So more, this is just an example, and we're working on how to make this more scalable. But I think if you've got the mobility, safety, growth, sustainability part locked, it works for single mothers a lot.
There's a lot of customization, like you said, and once you have that mindset of having conversations, so solutions do come up, and sometimes they're as simple as technology, training on technology, timely milta, so someone else taking the initiative for you is quite excellent, actually. A couple of questions did come up about, some well, safety की बात कर रहे हैं, so like domestic violence is a common issue that women do go through. I'm not really sure if there's specific programs at K Electric to deal with it, but if you have tons of experience as a working professional, so what do you think about this?
So again, you're right, we don't really have a specific program, but if you look at the global space, there are now policies in place to protect women in the home space as well. So we're working on this area. If I were to talk about from my personal experience, I think that, again, if you can provide women financial empowerment, if they're economically independent, and if they have a safe place to go to, if you can assist them during that temporary space, it makes a huge difference in their struggle. And if they have, how do I say this, a faith in the company that their job is not going to go away. So sort of job security also helps women deal with this aspect. While it may not apply to a lot of participants here, I do want to talk about, because when you're looking at particularly the textile industry and you've got a lot of women on the shop floor, it is very important that you make sure that the salary is being transferred to the bank account in the name of the female employee. In Pakistan, there is a growing trend where women don't have bank accounts, and there's a lot of bottlenecking for women to open their own bank accounts. So they will end up either having a joint account or sort of having the salary transferred into their husband's or their brother's or father's name, which means that they don't have access to the money. For our Roshni Baji program, we found out almost 80% of the women did not have bank accounts, and they submitted their relatives. So we made it compulsory that the money has to fall into your account. You have to have the checkbook, and you have to have how to use an ATM, by the way. And very grateful again, like I said, collaboration is key. So we got State Bank to come in, help these women. 100% women had their accounts opened. They knew how to write a check. They knew how to withdraw money from an ATM, which they didn't before this intervention. Most of them did. So again, making sure that you educate them financial literacy, particularly when you're looking at the the shop floor or the field staff level. So that really helps, because in that case, again, if you're giving them financial empowerment, but it's not in their access, kind of defeats the purpose. So that's just a nugget from my personal experience there. And that automatically helps them be more powerful and in these conversations, particularly when it comes to domestic disputes.
It also directly ties to research that says that women do stay in difficult home situations because of the lack of economic empowerment, job security, financial literacy, learning how to use the digital economy. These are really important tools. We still have more questions coming in. Sadia, I think I'll feel free to say it on your behalf so people can reach out to the K Electric team if they have specific questions. And the conversation will continue through serve engagements and initiatives as well. We did also have 2 days ago, K Electric join us to talk about the Roshni Baji program and how we're integrating more women into the supply chain. So these are conversations that are consistently happening, and it's never going to be a direct solution, a set of solutions that can be applied. Like the discussion from today with Sadia, we learned that we need to customize, and conversation, just asking women what they need and understanding the environment that they come from is the main mindset shift that Pakistan needs to take. Before I close off the session, I did want to ask if Charles or Ehsan Saab had any comments that they would like to share.
I think I just wanted to thank Sadia for being very open and transparent as always in sharing the journey. I think the point to make here is that it is a journey. We are nowhere near perfection. I don't know whether we will ever be, perfect, inverted commas, but we still need to, keep evolving and taking the right steps.
Absolutely, and I will, echo that sentiment that it is a journey, and we do invite everyone to help take this journey with us, and PBC member companies that are leading by example. Sadia, thank you so much for being here with us today. your transparency, KLX's disclosure process, everything is something that other companies, other executives can definitely aspire to. And Charles, thank you for your presentation, for the partnership that we've had with the IFC, and that has led to this, consistent cyclical way in which we can, enforce the idea, the importance of gender diversity, and then actually present a way for companies to make that journey with us. Charles, did you have something to add just before we close?
Yes, I was just gonna agree with Ihsansab that no one's perfect, but that Sadia, you mentioned that having the data and reporting the data, even if it's not perfect, there's nothing wrong with that, right? And that disclosure shows an intention and let's say a willingness and to improve. And so that if everything waited till perfection, nothing would ever happen, right? So I really like that point a lot. So thanks a lot. I encourage everyone here to participate, and hopefully there'll be a very positive experience to be part of this process. Thanks.
Thank you. And Sadia, if you could just close off with a quick comment.
Sure. So again, just to sort of recap, and particularly from an entry perspective, having a right strategy is the first step. So having your, set out your intention, you have a goal, you have a strategy in place, talk about it, disclose it. I mean, we're doing a lot of this work to attract the right kind of female talent. So if they don't know about it, kind of defeats the purpose. And keep stretching yourself. Yes, it is a journey. And if we keep at this pace, it's going to take a really long time. So have moonshot targets. You may or may not achieve them, but aspiring and sort of moving towards it at a much faster pace is what we need. And listen to the women in your workplace and give them solutions that will help them contribute. They add a lot of value, and it'd be sad to miss out on this. And I think the business imperative is clear, so hopefully nobody needs to know why, but the fact that we need to make sure that balance is there in the workplace. For K Electric, we're in the middle of crafting our goal with the help of SERB. So we want to make sure that by sort of having a target around the percentage of new recruits. So we want to make sure that 20% of all our future leaders in leadership roles, 20% recruits are women. 30% of our new recruits, between now and 2030 are female. We want to encourage women in STEM. So we're looking at programs that will help groom them, bring them into the workplace. So have goals, have a strategy, talk about it. And when you talk about it, you will hold yourselves and your organization a lot more accountable. So communicate with transparency is my last line for everyone.
Thank you so much to all the speakers, Sadia, Charles, and Ihsansab. Thank you for everyone for attending. The awards are still open for registration and submission. We look forward to that, and hopefully we'll all see you in June as well when we have our ceremony. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Raja. Thank you for organizing this and for running today's session. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Raja. Thank you, everyone. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice day.